So that is an exercise to help with your Schubert impromptu number 2 D946, which I've recently found out is considered easier than the other two impromptus in that D946 set. So it's definitely a great piece, and I think it's a possible one for an amateur pianist to master with dedication, because it's quite difficult. So I would like to speak now about the opera Aleko, which I watched for the first time in its entirety yesterday on Rachmaninoff's birthday. It's the 150th anniversary of the great composer and pianist and conductor. Aleko is a one-act play, and it was it's got a famous cavatina by Aleko and a duet between the young gypsy and Zemfira. It's he wrote it, I think, when he was 18, I think, or maybe just 19, and it's quite a I think it's a good work. I think it's a successful opera. It doesn't really I think it could it's based on Pushkin's story called The Gypsies, Tsigani in Russian, and he it's, I think, appropriate for a play, for an opera. Weaknesses, I would say, would be probably the libretto. I can't remember who did that. Can't remember the name of the librettist. But anyway, it's there's not the psychological realism necessary, I think, for the character of Aleko, and there's not enough. It's a little bit. There's not enough background given as to the well, there is. It doesn't. I feel as though it could have had more. It could have had more sort of more background given as to the histories of the characters, their personal histories. I mean, that's not Rachmaninoff's fault. It's, I would say, the librettist's fault. I thought it was the choruses were good. There was some good. There was a good final chorus, very successful, I think. I thought it was just generally implausible, the way that it was basically in one act. I think that literally it needed to have been more, but he was only given, I think, as a graduation exercise, they had to do a one act opera, so obviously he couldn't be more than that, and so I thought it was good. It is not as good as his other two operas which he did, but as a first opera it's very good. I think it won him the gold medal. I think it was one of only 3 winners of that gold medal from the Moscow Conservatory. Yeah, it's certainly it's quite good the way that it also incorporated some sort of almost ballet aspects or gymnastics, really, with the gypsy acting troops. So it worked quite well visually. I thought that I think it was Shaliapin was the first Aleko, the bass. He was a bass, yeah, and he was born in Kazan, which I've been there and I've seen the statue to Shaliapin as he looks down. He was born on Bauman Street, Bauman Street. Bauman, yeah, Bauman. It's a central street in Kazan. and he was apparently the last person who Rachmaninoff saw, one of two I think, anyway, who saw him off at the station to go off to Finland, to was it Finland, to Finland, I think, yeah. So and then he was in the West for the rest of his life. I think that's right. No, was it? Yeah, I think that's right. Yeah, not that he hadn't already been to Europe. He had been already. I think he had already been to America actually, as well as Dresden. Yeah, that's right. He composed a third concerto in Dresden, and he finished it off near Novgorod. So, but anyway, he was a good friend of Rachmaninoff, and there was some false things said about his relationship with Chaliapin in the first biography written, which was called "What Rachmaninoff Told Me," and even though it was, yeah, that's right, they had lots of false things, but the writer died, and so Rachmaninoff didn't want to kick up a fuss and sort of talk about all the different errors that were there. He didn't want to cause problems for the widow and the family. But they were, as I understood it, very good friends, Rachmaninoff and Chaliapin. And yeah, he was the first Aleko, and it was a very, very successful play. So it launched him into fame. He got A+ from the graduation teachers, one of whom was Tchaikovsky. A+, 5s in Russian, and it's like in the same way that, for example, Schubert's famous first song, not his first song was Gretchen at the spinning wheel, but the first one which catapulted him to fame was the song, what was it called? The Earl King, I think. In the same way, this catapulted Rachmaninoff to fame overnight, as it were, like it did to Schubert, the Earl King song. So I think it's a successful opera, and certainly as a first opera, and I think it does well in all the areas that an opera should, really. So that's been informative, and it's the 150th anniversary of Rachmaninoff's birth. He was born in 1873, and it's obviously 150 years since his birth. He was born in Novgorod, I think, and yeah, there we go. So thank you very much, and see you